Welcome back to Chapter 2, Testing Through Software Development Lifecycle. This is Part 3 of the Introduction to Software Quality Assurance class. Section 2.3, Test Types. Functionality of the system is meant to test what the system does. Non-functionality attributes of system is meant to test how well the system does what it does. Each test type is selected to focus on a particular test object. Meaning, in all of this, different tests have different objectives, I guess, in the end. I hate to use the word objective, but yeah. In one test, you want to see if you have COVID, and in another test, you want to see if you are a terrible driver. So, different test types have different objectives, but most tests have these goals in common. Evaluating the functional quality. Is this feature working? Evaluation of non-functional quality characteristics, performance, security, and usability. Evaluating architecture of components in the system to see if it works and fits the scope. Evaluating effects of changes, confirmation tests, and regression testing. Functional testing. Function of a system is what it does, described in the work product, like the business requirements. It's often called black box testing. Testing 100% of the parts in the system does not mean that the system is 100% tested. I believe it was the second, part 2 of this lesson that I gave the example of the vehicle, the watercraft, and the home all being insured in one policy. After we had done the component of each one passing, you put the 3 together, and for some reason it did not pass. So that's the perfect example of you can test A, you can test B, A plus B, not always working. Usually done from 2 perspectives. The requirements-based perspective, which uses specifications for functional requirements as the basis to design tests, and the business process-based testing, which uses knowledge of the business processes. Non-functional attribute of system focuses on how well or how fast something is done. Non-functional tests are done at all test levels for performance, stress, usability, security, etc. And how well does the system work? White box testing looks at internal structure of the system, system's architecture, code, control flows, business processes, and data flows, aka the structural testing or the glass box testing. Used to measure thoroughness of testing through coverage of items. Happens at any test level, but usually works best at the lower levels, like on the components. The coverage measurement tools are used to measure the percentage of executable elements. Change-related testing. Testing of changes. It's different from other types of testing because a change in the software will change the way it functions, how well it functions, and the structure. Things to be aware of in this test type are the change itself, the confirmation testing, and then the effects of the change, regression testing. Confirmation testing, aka retesting. In this system, a tester finds a bug, reports the bug, possibly creates a ticket for tracking purposes, waits until the next version is published, then reruns the failed test to confirm that the bug is no longer showing. Regression testing, which should be aka anti-regression testing. In this system, a tester will run a test to make sure there are no more bugs, and it's meant to avoid unintentional adverse side effects. So a good example of this is I want to run a test where I am purchasing a pair of pants in Ohio. And I go through the test, I purchase the pants, and I make sure that the billing address and the shipping address are the same and everything is working. But when I try to enter the address of Ohio from the drop-down list, it won't let me. Ohio is missing. All the states are there except Ohio. What do? I create a ticket. I tell the tester to make sure that Ohio is included in this. I go back and I look at it. And when I do the confirmation testing to see that Ohio is there, it works. But when I do the regression testing to make sure that Ohio is there, it doesn't work. Here's the problem. Ohio's in it, but now Ohio's the only one in it. So we've created a problem. We went from having no Ohio to only Ohio. So I tell him, look, you've got Ohio in the drop-down list, but it's only Ohio. You have to go back and fix it again. So hopefully that makes sense, that you could see where the bug was fixed, but it wasn't really fixed. So I had to go back, and it had an adverse side effect. Functional tests at each level. In this example, component testing, how each part should calculate the compound interest. Oh, this is from the book, I should have said. I'm sorry. In the book, they give you an example, and they talk about banking. And in the example, the component testing is how each part should calculate the compound interest. The component integration testing is how account info from the user is passed to the business. System testing is how the account holders apply for their line of credit. And the system integration testing is how the system uses external microservers to check the account and the credit score. The acceptance testing is how the banker handles the approval or denial of the credit application. And you can see this is on page 67 of the textbook. The functional tests at each test level, in this example, the component testing is the number of CPU cycles to perform the complex calculations. The component integration testing, checking for buffer overflow, which is a security flaw, or data passed from the user interface to the business logic. System testing, portability tests on whether the presentation layer works on browsers and devices. System integration tests to check if the robustness of credit microserver does not respond. Acceptance testing is usability tests for accessibility of the banker's credit process for interface of the people with disabilities. And this one you can find on page 68. In the white box test at each test level, in the example, component testing achieve 100% statement and decision coverage for all components performing financial calculations. Component integration testing, coverage of how each screen passes data to the next screen and the business logic. Systems testing, coverage of web pages that can occur during a credit application. System integration testing, coverage of all possible inquiry types sent to the microservice. And acceptance testing is coverage of all financial data, file structures, and value ranges from bank-to-bank transfers. Again, you can see this on page 68. And the change-related tests at each test level, and this example, are the component testing is automated regression tests are included in the continuous integration framework and pipeline. Component integration testing is confirmation tests for defects are run as the fixes are checked into the repository. System tests. All tests for a given workflow are re-executed if any screen changes. System integration testing. As part of the continuous deployment of the credit scoring microservice, automated tests are re-executed. Acceptance testing. All previously failed tests are re-executed after defects found are fixed. Again, this is page 68. 2.4 maintenance testing. Testing is done during the life cycle phase. It should be done regularly with a schedule and any hot fixes. Hot fixes, I put AKA +1. A hot fix, the book uses as a patch. That's the term that they use for a patch. In my work, we have a +1. I'm sure there are many other different phrases used. Anytime you have to apply a patch for something, the example I gave earlier with the two drivers, they decided that it was an acceptable risk, so they put the bug into the system knowingly, and then they decided later on they will have a patch for it. That patch will be a +1. And then the scope of maintenance testing depends upon the degree of risk of change, self-contained versus external, the size of the existing system, and the size of the change. Also, I want to go back real quick to the second point on here. It should be done regularly with a schedule and with any hot fixes. The maintenance testing that we do at my work, we do at very strange hours, and this is pretty common for testers. If they're to put in a patch in a system while there are customers on the site, it's going to cause a lot of errors. So what they usually do is they choose a time when most people will not be online. So I will every so often have to work at like 6 in the morning on a Sunday once a month. or if we are doing some sort of migration testing from one system to another, it will be like 2, 3 a.m. Sunday or Saturday. Super strange times, just basically when other people are not going to be online. So once a month, we have our 7 a.m. Sunday tests, and then any other time we have to do a strange patch or a migration that will be at a strange time. And you should really be expecting this when you start your career, because anytime the rest of the world is asleep, there's a really good chance you're going to need to have to work. And if your manager is as generous as mine, then you can use those hours and bank them and use them at another time to take time off of work. But that's not always guaranteed. So part of being a tester is that you will work very strange hours. 2.4.1, trigger for maintenance testing. Types of tests that are done for change to existing system. The modifications, which are the planned changes that are meant to enhance the system. They can be an upgrade or hardware exchange. A lot of times, the company that I work for, we have regulatory and legal compliance issues that we have to update information. So these modifications are done on a monthly basis. Also, because we're insurance, the location of where a vehicle or a home is insured will change due to stuff like wildfires, crime, hurricanes. So again, constantly doing modifications for our system. The migrations, moving from one platform to another. This often means when one company buys another. I have actually been through 5 different migrations for a company, which is a lot. But now I have a lot of migration testing to put on my resume. They are very strange hours. They are very strenuous tasks. It's really not pleasant. A lot of times they'll be canceled halfway through and you'll have to come back to it. This is something that really no one wants to do, and it is definitely, it tests your personality more than your ability to actually test quality assurance, because you have got to stay positive and keep trying despite very adverse situation with the migration testing. And if you can get through one migration testing, you can get through any of them. Like I said, I've been through 5. They're hard, but they're not impossible. And then retirement. Retirement requires ability to archive and retrieve data. Legal and regulatory standards often apply. Anytime you work with something like banking, insurance, medical, HIPAA, anytime you're in any kind of human care, these all have really strict requirements. You need to make sure that you archive correctly. I worked at a bank, and we used to have things done by paper, and I went through the files just because our branch was shutting down, and I threw out any bank accounts that were closed for more than 7 years with us, and it was a huge amount of paperwork. If that had been data in a system, it would have been a good in one way, and that the system was holding onto this information as needed, but it would have been bad in the sense that it would have been a massive amount of data, and it would have cost a lot of money to keep that on file in some kind of memory bank. So just interesting that I saw all this paperwork that was unnecessary, and had it been data in a computer, it probably would have been flushed out on its own properly. That's what it should have done, at least. Impact analysis and regression testing. Impact analysis is the decision on what parts of the system may be unintentionally affected and need more regression testing. It's often affected by specifications that are out of date or missing, test cases not documented or out of date, bidirectional traceability is not properly maintained, tool support is weak, people involved do not have system knowledge, and maintainability of software has not been taken into consideration. One thing that actually a good example of this is just last week I was working with some manual testers, and they will give me some very complicated orders of items that they would like. Sometimes it feels like I'm working at McDonald's, because they'll say, oh, I'd like an insurance policy for 6 vehicles and 2 properties and 1 watercraft. And if you could make it dated for next month, that would be great. So I'll go ahead and I'll create these tests, and I'll run that test today, and I'll run that test tomorrow, and I'll run it for another month, and then suddenly the test will stop working. They don't understand why. Well, the reason why is because when I put data into my system, the smallest thing, a comma, a space, a column header changes, something like that, and it will change how the system will run on an automated test. Manual testers don't understand how automated tests work, so they don't realize that suddenly the comma that's been added to a test is making everything fail. So that little bit of maintaining the test is needed. So when they come to me with these tests over and over again with these complicated orders, I have to say, listen, I'm sorry, but I can't keep up with maintaining and creating everything that you want in addition to doing my job. You're going to have to make your own tests. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but we do what we got to do. Oh, end of slideshow. So that is the end of chapter 2. I will put up the assignment for lab 2, and I hope to hear back from you guys soon. Also, if you ever have any questions, please contact me. I know I told you this before, but I want to tell you again. I'm new to teaching, so if this class is not what you want, or you feel like you're not learning, or there are subjects that you would like to learn more about, please let me know. I'm really happy to do that, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.